So welcome back to the show, and now I have the privilege to have Brad Yates with me. Hi Brad, how are you?
I'm excellent, Bertrand. How about you?
I am fine, I'm really, really good. Thank you for being here and thank you for accepting to be on this show. I have
Oh,
been following your work for a little while and I'm really impressed with what you're doing, so thank you.
thank you.
Yeah. So Brad, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you're doing and who you are?
Sure. I'm this guy who started out as an actor and, didn't really have the guts to do it. I didn't put myself out there enough. And so, when my wife was pregnant with our first child, I decided I need to have a backup plan. And I became a hypnotherapist and was very interested then in helping other people find within themselves what it takes to be successful at whatever they wanted to do. Did that for a little bit, and then I learned about EFT, and little by little, I started out doing hypnotherapy sessions with a little bit of EFT at the end, and now I do EFT sessions with a little bit of hypnosis at the end. Just trying to help people find the courage in themselves to really live the lives they really want to live.
Yeah, that's great. But your way of doing EFD is a little bit different than the traditional way, I would say.
Well, I because I have a background as an actor and a cartoonist, and part of my acting background is I trained at Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey's Clown College. So I have a background with a lot of comedy. So I like to bring a very light touch to it, and a creative touch. So I probably have a sort of a different background, more artistic background than a lot of other people in this field. So that's probably I hope that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking about this, but sometimes when I'm tapping using your material, it's like it never ends. You're tapping, 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 and it's like running 100 to 200 meters here.
Yeah, some friends of mine. I was at the house of Gary Craig once for a weekend with some other practitioners. We were helping him develop a workshop, and one of the other practitioners said, "Oh yeah, my partner and I, when we're tapping for a long time, we call that Brad tapping." It's like, oh, okay, so that's what I'm famous for, going on and on and on and on. But for me, it's kind of a channeling process, a very intuitive process. So once I get into the round with someone, and I don't consider myself psychic per se. I'm not a fortune teller or anything like that. But there's a connection that happens. I think with all of us, we're all connected by energy. But there's a connection that also happens in the tapping round, and I pick up on things, and just a lot of ideas come through me, and so I try not to shut that down. There are times where I'm in a situation where there are obvious time constraints and I need to wrap it up. But as much as possible, I try to, as the ideas keep coming, I try to just keep letting them flow and letting them flow until the tapping round comes to an organic ending.
Hmm. And how do you think that this helps really the clients to do this?
Well, it's there's something the messages that seem to come through are this is what this person needs to hear right now. Here is something, and I don't claim 100% accuracy. Sometimes my own thoughts come in and stuff, but just a lot of times it's just a thought of this would be an important point to make right now. Here's something to consider. Oh, here's something that they may not have thought of before. And it's not from any list that I have of, oh, make sure you cover this and this and this.
So how do you think that this is going to help people? The fact that you are feeling what they need to hear.
Yeah. As the ideas come through me, there's a sense. I just get a sort of a sense of, okay, here's something that this person probably needs to hear. Here's something they may not have considered. Here's a different way of looking at it. And I don't always know which ones are going to be right. Sometimes I'll say something and the client will say, yeah, that doesn't sound relevant. Fortunately, that's fairly rare. Most of the time it's like, wow, where did that come from? And I'm like, I don't know. but there's they're just ideas and thoughts and different perspectives that come to mind that I think will really help the client and help them see things from a different way. And then, of course, with the tapping going on at the same time, we're clearing out the resistance to seeing it in that different way.
Yeah, I think that this is really interesting what you're saying here, because with tapping, if unless it's very accurate what you're tapping on, it's quite difficult really to connect with the words. But sometimes when we have different words, it just seems that something is shifting, even if it's not exactly this one, but it's like everything that is covered up is just going away, because it's like the word itself is a resistance.
Yeah, yeah. So, and in the process of tapping for longer, I can sometimes cover a lot of different aspects, whereas in traditional, I mean, the original version of EFT, where it's just one round, you might say, okay, this aspect, tap through it, then this aspect, then tap through it. And what I'm hoping in the work is that I'm covering a lot of different aspects in a way that flows together. And, I sometimes get comments from folks saying, oh yeah, I love the longer tapping because, it's not until like, 3/4 of the way through, things have been building up, and then finally there's that release that everything else has been building up to, that they feel that they don't get with shorter rounds.
Mm-hmm. So you're using EFT for nearly every block, or are there specific things that you're addressing?
It's the phrase that we use in EFT is try it on everything. So, and in working with a client, they could be saying, well, I want to work on my money issues. And yet the issues that show up for us are usually symptoms of what's going on inside. Symptoms of being resistant to good things happening to us. And so we might block that financially. We might block that physically with our health. We might block that in relationships. So as we go through and we can start on, what the main issue is that's coming up for the person. But in doing that, as we go through, we find that it all comes down to issues of worthiness, issues of self-love. So yeah, we tap on everything, and we hopefully by starting here or starting there, we come down to what's really at the core of allowing someone to feel really good about themselves, and in feeling really good, allowing them to manifest the best life possible.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that, as you said, it's whatever is happening in our world, in fact, is a reflection of what's happening inside us.
Yeah, the outside world is a reflection of what's going on inside. And so if we're experiencing lack in any area of our lives outside, there's probably something inside that's feeling lack. And also, I like to say that self-sabotage is simply misguided self-love. So that stuff that's going on inside is some part of us trying to take care of ourselves in outdated ways, in ways that are not really effective. It's not, we wouldn't logically say, oh yes, it's very effective for me to make sure that I have no money coming in. But at an unconscious level, part of us is saying, money's bad, having money is bad. And if we allow that, we're going to have some difficulty in our lives, much more difficulty than this. It's a struggle not having money, but the struggle of having money would be worse, according to this old programming that we've built up, over all of our lives. So, yeah, all of that stuff inside is, there's just a fear of something happening, and so whatever that fear is inside, it then gets manifested outside.
When you say a fear of something happening, and you just mentioned the blocks that we're creating, does it mean that being poor is one of the response that we can have to avoid a fear of, I don't know, something if we get wealthy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the main reason, because, if we look around at the world, there's abundance all around, and so we set all these rules about money that we don't set about a lot of things. Someone who is blocking themselves financially, they can be walking along a street and they'll see a tree with tons of leaves on it, And they won't say, "Oh, I shouldn't see all those leaves. I can only see three or four." But to the universe, there's no difference between leaves and money. It's there's just abundance. There's enough. So in any area of our lives where we're not experiencing enough, and we don't need to experience excess. Some people want to. Some people feel a need to, and that actually comes from fear as well. This need to have more than you can use. Um, it's finding out what you really want to experience. But when we're experiencing not enough, that's because there's some sort of fear. And I've actually talked about, in terms of health, it's like having a note from the doctor to excuse you from things you don't want to do. Well, same with money, using money as an excuse. It's like, gee, if I had all this money, then I might do this or I might do that. And part of me feels that those would be risky. So if I can limit my finances, well, then I have an excuse for not doing that. If someone says, hey, let's go do this, and it sounds like, ooh, that could be trouble for me, how great if I can say, ooh, I'm a little short on cash right now, I can't go. And we don't, obviously this is not a conscious thing, we're not consciously doing it, but part of our mind says, wow, life could be dangerous if I had the resources to experience more. But as long as I keep myself stuck, then I kind of have an excuse for not showing up in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, I can get this, but also something else from my mind is that we may also lose our connection with other people and relating to other people if we start to experience too much of anything in our life.
Definitely one of the fears. There are so many fears around money. Ones that have been pounded in through different religions. Money is the root of all evil, which is not what it says. It's the love of money, and it's not. It's this lust for money, this attachment to money that causes it. But it's and also maybe a lot of people's parents teach them, oh, rich people are greedy and they're bad, and so we have this belief, and we may see all kinds of news stories about this. Even though there are plenty of rich people doing absolutely wonderful things who are absolutely delightful people, we don't see those in the media or the news as much. So we have this idea that, oh, having a lot of money is bad, and I don't want to be a bad person, or rich people are cut off from other people, or they don't get along with other people. So we have those fears about money, and that blocks us from having more. We also see that other people have that belief. So if people in my family or my friends have these blocks about money, then who am I to clear those blocks and have a lot of money? Because I'm going to lose all the people I care about. It's like we're given this choice. Okay, you can have the people that you love, or you can have money, but not both. It's like, and so not realizing that that's a fallacy, not realizing that that's just a belief that can be shifted. We're just not taught to even look at that. So we go, okay, put the money aside, and I'm going to stick with the people that I care about. And so we're all stuck in this place of lack that none of us should be experiencing. But I think it's much better to say, no. It's okay to have money. I'm going to have a lot of money, and I'm going to show you how to have a lot of money. And then rather than the two of us being together in this poor place, let's be together in this really rich place. Much, much better for everyone.
Yeah, it is much better, but sometimes because it's so unconscious, this behavior, that we don't really realize this, and then what you're talking here is about beliefs, in fact, that we have. But how do we go to these beliefs? How do we find them?
Well, one of the things is often I'll start off with what people are feeling. Like I'll say, okay, close your eyes, take a deep breath. Think about having this amount of money. And most people will, unless they're really comfortable with having money, they're going to go, well, it feels great. A lot of people say, oh, it would be really great. But if we probe a little bit deeper, it's like, okay, well, I'm getting this queasy feeling in my stomach, or I feel a tightness in my shoulders, or, and sometimes they'll be clear on the ideas. They'll say, oh, I know exactly what it is. When I was 5 years old, my dad was reading the paper and was saying, oh, those lousy rich people are ruining everything. And so sometimes we're very clear on where those beliefs are formed, and sometimes we're not sure of the events or the wording, but we can be aware of of how we feel about money. And so with the tapping, then I would start with, even though I get this feeling in my stomach about money. And with EFT, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. And as we go through it, we start to become more aware of where those beliefs come from and what those beliefs are. And then we can start clearing them out and have new beliefs about it.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying it's really being very persistent with EFT. So it's not to run, because there is this misconception sometimes that you can do one round of tapping and then it's cleared. And
that happens sometimes. There are certainly, the discovery of the tapping happened with a 1 minute wonder that Roger Callahan did for this woman's fear of water. When we call them 1 minute wonders, but they don't happen all the time. Sometimes it takes a lot of persistence. Now, I'd rather spend, if it took, say, a year or two of tapping, I'd rather spend a year or two of tapping, clearing beliefs out that set me free to have a much better life, than to say, a year or two, that's way too long. I'd rather go through the next 30 years of my life stuck with this issue. What? So it's much quicker than pretty much anything else, but it's not always instantaneous.
No, it is not, no. From my own experience is that I'm finding now easier the beliefs that I have, but it's still hard work just to go to this, and it's every day, and I got now into the habit that as soon as I feel, because I start now to really feel what is happening inside me, to tap straight away. But it takes a lot of discipline to do this at the start.
It does. Well, and here's the thing also, like I said, self-sabotage is misguided self-love. So there's a part of us that wants to stay stuck. We have this idea that, of course I want to be free, of course I want to be rich, of course I want... Consciously, yes, but unconsciously, there's a part of us that goes, no, I want to be stuck where I am. I want to be in my comfort zone. So there's a part of us that says, oh yeah, I'm gonna do the tapping and I'm gonna get clear. And another part of us says, no, no, you're not. Well, look at the time. We've got to go do this, and the phone's ringing, and this, and we've got all these other things to do. And it's looking for excuses not to do that because it doesn't want to leave the comfort zone. Likewise, when we're tapping on our own, that's why when I'm working with someone and there's this intuitive connection and thoughts come through me for the person, everyone knows we're all connected to the same universal source of knowledge, but we block a lot of that, and it's my own issues and I want to be stuck in my comfort zone for some reason. I'm going to have blinders on and I'm not going to see certain things. And so I'm not going to allow that intuitive process to come through and let me know where some of those blocks are. And that's not to say that tapping on your own isn't beneficial. It's absolutely beneficial, and I highly recommend it because even without knowing the words, just tapping, we're clearing stuff out. But some of the stuff that could really, get in there and clinch things and speed it up, sometimes we're less likely to allow that to come through us because part of us is like, oh, no, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to know that because if you knew that, you'd be free.
Yeah. I have a little story to tell here, and it's a true story, but it's kind of amazing. Because my daughter usually is upstairs and she likes her computer, so she doesn't really come. And yesterday I think I was tapping, and as soon as I started tapping, it's like at some energy level, I communicated with her, and she came downstairs right in the middle. And I was kind of fascinating by this, because why is she coming now? And she wants something small, but it was like if, part of me said, no, you're not going to do it, I'm going to disallow you to do this. And that's just amazing how this happens.
Well, it's like kind of what I was saying earlier about being psychic. At some level, we're all psychic because we're all connected. And this idea of us and them, this separation between us is something of an illusion. And so when we're tapping, we're clearing that kind of stuff out. So we allow ourselves to feel that connection much more. So that, while I'm sure it would be very freaky to have it happen at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense because you get into that zone of creation and connection. So you're allowing that to happen.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and we allow this to happen, but also I was just gobsmacked because it was just an evidence of our power. Yeah.
Yeah, I've said, in Christianity, Jesus said, "These things I do, you shall do also and greater still." These things I do, like walking on water, turning water into wine, things like that. And what I like to say is, so yes, we probably could walk on water, except that it would freak the heck out of us. It's like, I don't want to know that I can walk on water because, well, there's the story, that goes around about the grandma lifting the car off of her grandson. And, in that moment of the adrenaline, well, I heard that a psychologist tracked this woman down because we never heard from her again. And there were no other interviews. And he tracked her down and found out that she was scared because she suddenly realized what she was capable of. And she felt, if I can do that, what excuse do I have for not achieving so much more in my life? And it scared her. I mean, this thing is, we get scared of our power. We run away from it. We're afraid to be that powerful, especially at a certain point in life, because it's, wow, if I'm that powerful, how do I explain what's gone on before and what hasn't gone on before? And it was great because, from what I understand, the psychologist talked to her and got her to shift her focus. And at like 80 years old or something like that, she decided, she said she had always been interested in archaeology, and she went back, got her degree in archaeology, and became an archaeologist and taught archaeology towards the end of her life. So finally got back in touch with being able to do what she really wanted to do, and did things that she had never allowed herself to do. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. In fact, it's in that quote by Marianne Williamson. What our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And there's a part of us that goes, "Oh, please don't let me be that powerful."
But there's another part that says, "Please be that powerful," and that's why we have the conflict.
That inner self that says, "That's what I'm here for. I'm here to do that." And it's just over time that we've been programmed by all kinds of different things that say, play small, don't stand out from the crowd, don't do this, don't do that. Or we've tried to be great and it didn't go so well. And so we experienced some pain, some disappointment. And so part of us says, yeah, I don't want to try that again. That's that self-love that says, don't try to be successful, because remember the last time and the time before that, and there was disappointment and the crying and the pain, and let's just spare ourselves all that and just play small. And so little by little we cover up that voice. So that voice that says, yes, I'm awesome, I can do anything, when we muffle it.
Yeah, and this is why life sometimes is presenting us with our deepest challenges, or hardest challenges, because that will force us to be.
Yeah. It's this came up in a session that I did this morning, talking about these challenges, and thinking like, oh, this is life is out to get me, and it's letting me down and hurting me, and recognizing, well, maybe it's just giving you an opportunity for growth, and looking at when we're babies and we're learning to walk. And we would never, take that first step, fall down, and then look at our parents and say, I can't believe you allowed me to do that. I can't believe you let me fall down. But we would be terrible parents if we didn't let our children learn how to walk. So it's in those challenges that we start to discover who we really can be.
Yeah. For me, it was exactly this. I had to cross a big challenge to be able to do what I'm doing now. But it took me 44 years before I started to do this. But I'm not saying that my life was bad before, but it was not the same kind of life.
I can relate. I was before I got into this, I was in a bad place. Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that because when, after trying to make it as an actor, at 34 years old, with my wife and kids, I moved back home to my parents' house because of where I was at, and didn't do much for some time, and was in a pretty low place. I wasn't making any money. I started to put on a lot of weight. I was having a lot of trouble in my relationships. So, but from that, I started to get more honest with myself about who I was and what blocks I had to all kinds of different things, including success. And it was about that time that I learned EFT, and little by little with the EFT, and also this real honesty with who I was and what I needed, and that it just started to unfold, and now I love my life. I get to do work that I love, and I get a lot of nice comments on it. I get opportunities like this, and it's good.
It's good. But when you were in your lowest part of your life, you did not at the time recognize that this was an opportunity for you, I guess.
No, I was
No.
not. I am so grateful for my lack of employment. I am so grateful for all this extra weight that I'm putting on. No. I was kind of clueless. I was so. Now I can look back and say, "Oh, I'm glad it happened." Now the funny thing is that a lot of people will say, you need to get more angry, you need to get more discontent in order to be successful. And to me, that's trying to be motivated by misery, which we often are. Often from those places, we say, "I've had enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm going to make a change now." But if we're not at that place, too often I'll hear people say, "Well, you just need to get more discontent. Get angrier about where you're at." It's like, well, that to me is like saying, okay, if I'm right here where I'm at and I want to go and I want to head west, that's like saying, I'm not heading west. I'm just not heading west. I think I should go a little bit more east, and then I'll realize that I really want to go west. It's like, no, we always want to be moving towards the positive. If we're in a bad enough place that it motivates us, great. But to go lower to try to get higher doesn't make sense to me. So.
No, it doesn't. Especially if you want to do this consciously. If you're pushed the lower, then you don't really have a choice, because especially in the time of your life. But I do understand that sometimes anger is a good energy shift. It kind of moves you into kind of going to gears. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, anger is not a bad emotion. It's an uncomfortable emotion, but it's a human emotion. And it's there for a reason. It's there to get us motivated. But if it's not motivating us, I don't think that the key is to feel more of it. Is to look at, okay, I always want to try to feel better. But there are definitely times that anger that we're not trying to create, trying to make ourselves angrier. That's like saying, I'm not losing weight. I think I should pack on a few more pounds, and then I'll do it. Or to despise myself more for the weight that I have on, or to despise myself more about the debt. Gee, I'm not doing anything about getting myself out of debt. I think I'll go run up another credit card, and then I'll get really angry about it, and then I'll do something. No, it's always trying to move upwards from where we're at. But absolutely, I certainly don't when it gets to that point, definitely can be a very powerful motivator for us.
Yeah, it can be, yeah. But sometimes, yeah, you need to go to a certain threshold of pain before you can do something in your life. And that's maybe... But I guess that now, because you are so conscious of the power of feeling good and the power of living more consciously, it is, for you now, doesn't make sense to go to the anger anymore. But maybe for people who are really feeling stuck and it's kind of in the muddy stuck, that maybe that will be one way of just unstucking them for a while. And I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to find what motivates us. To To me, motivation comes when the perceived outcome outweighs the perceived cost. So, when we're looking at becoming more of anything, becoming healthier, becoming wealthier, there are things we need to do. So we will say, okay, the perceived benefit of taking these actions is that I'm going to have more money. But the perceived cost is that I'm going to take risks, and people might say no to me and I might feel rejected. So when the perceived benefit of making money outweighs the perceived cost of the risks, that's when we're more motivated. So, but what can happen then is someone will say, okay, well, I'm really far in debt now. So now the perceived benefit of avoiding the risk is no longer as great. So we're trying to increase the motivation pushing us. I'll try to put this clearly. It's like we want to move forward, but there's a wall. What Bob Proctor calls the terror barrier. So we're feeling up against this wall, and it's like, I can't push past this. So what we're doing when we're trying to get more discontent or angrier is we're trying to increase the pressure from behind that's going to push us up against that wall with the idea of, okay, if I'm pushed up against it, eventually I'm going to push through it. As opposed to what I like to do with EFT is clear the fear of this wall, so that rather than having to be pushed through a wall, recognizing that wall's not really there. And so we can move forward, we can be drawn forward towards what's in front of us by what we find appealing up there. Whatever the prize is up there, whether it's a relationship or a healthier body or a new house, a new car, whatever's there, we're seeing it out there. And we're up against this wall, and we're thinking, okay, I need to have something. If we try to get angry, we're just trying to push ourselves from behind as opposed to pulling down the resistance. So I would rather tap through the fear and go, oh, hey, there's no wall there. I could just move forward and go ahead and get what I want.
Yeah, I just had this strange picture in my mind when you were talking about the wall and the pushing behind to be completely squashed on the wall, And
well, that's what happens is if that resistance is heavy, and we're not moving through it, and we decide that the way to move through it is to get angrier and to get more discontent, then that's when we start to squash ourselves with the intention that with enough pressure, I'm going to break through this wall before I get squished. But it's pretty uncomfortable in there, in that moment of being. So we're squishing ourselves with the expectation that if I get squished enough, then I'll finally break through. Because most of us, we're not taught ways to break down the resistance. We don't know that there are ways to clear the fear. We're just sort of, that wall is there. It's going to be there. There's nothing you can do about this wall except maybe get pushed enough till you break through it. So this is the kinder, gentler way of moving forward and allowing ourselves to be motivated.
Yeah. So you're saying that we should use EFT every day, and you have a nice quote, I can say, in one of your programs. You say it's like taking aspirin when you have a headache. If you have a headache, you don't take aspirin one out of 3 times. You take every time. So it's really this kind of discipline that is going to help us to move forward, or
yeah, and it's. We brush our teeth daily. We take showers daily because we know that filth, compounds. We know that there are consequences if we don't, practice hygiene on a regular basis. To me, EFT is energy hygiene. There's toxic energy, negative beliefs, negative stories that we hear that build on top of us, and that stress builds up. And this is like taking a bath. So we want to be clear because we're not conscious of this. We're not taught this for the most part. So we let this build up. in ways that we would never allow ourselves to do with our physical hygiene. And then what happens is, someone says a cross word to us and we blow up out of proportion because we haven't been managing that. And, so if we tap on a daily basis, obviously on what's there, like if you have the headache, you take the aspirin. So whenever there's some sort of discomfort, it's like, ooh, I'm feeling angry right now. I want to work through that. I want to see what's really there. The idea of tapping on anger is not so that, as we said, anger is a human emotion that's there for a reason. It's there to tell us that there's something that needs to be changed. So the idea of tapping through the anger is not that, okay, I'm going to totally forget about it. I'm not going to make any changes. It's allowing ourselves to become more clear about what we're angry about and what those changes are, and giving us the freedom to then make those changes. This is not about, like certain medications, it's just dealing with the symptom. It's not dealing with the cause. There are brain scans of human brain activity with anxiety. And there's a study done where they showed with tapping how the brain activity normalized, but with anti-anxiety medication, the symptoms went away, but the brain activity didn't change. There was still an anxious state of brain activity. So we're clearing that so that we can actually make those changes. It's not about just making these emotions that are there to prod us. It's not about just making them go away so that we stay stuck. It's giving us the freedom to actually do what we want to do. So by doing that on a daily basis, we free ourselves to really create the life we want and to experience so much more peace. Just like showering daily helps us experience so much more hygiene, which the people around us really appreciate. This helps us experience much more peace, which the people around us will also appreciate.
Yeah, it's true. And I must say that once we have this peace, as you say, we can notice the times where we're not feeling well. Whereas before I did my own journey here, I was always in this place of sadness, not feeling well. I would notice the happy times, and then I would say something great like, "It's too good to be true now," or "It will not last any longer." But now it's kind of the opposite. I can feel every time I have a discomfort, I can feel it, and I can say, I can then have a choice, which is very, very powerful.
Well, and to go back to the shower analogy, if you go for long enough without a shower, you start to stop noticing, It's like, after a few days, like, ooh, I'm kind of rank. Oh, God. But, after about a month, it's like your senses are sort of dead to it. The same with this emotional stuff, with this stress and unhappiness. And we just sort of get used to it and decide that's just the way it is. And as you said, we become we then block that idea of, I could be happier. It's like, and again, that's that same, self-love that's acting up, that's saying, ooh, don't start thinking that because, we don't want to be disappointed. If we start thinking that happiness is possible and we're sad again tomorrow, that's going to be painful. We're going to crash. We don't want to feel that. Just don't pay attention. That happiness stuff, it'll fade. And we go back to our what's status quo, our sort of set point.
Yeah, unless we don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something also I'm very passionate about because I am a single dad, so for me, my child, this is very important. But I also thought you have written a book, EFT for Children, or something like this,
Yeah,
and that's very, very interesting.
Well, I have children of my own. Actually, I wish that I'd written the book earlier when they were much younger. Because I think they would have enjoyed it more because, when I just tell them to tap, it's oh, Dad, everything the dad does is uncool. But it was coming out of doing this work and working with all these adults, and so many of our issues come from things that happened in our childhood. And it was like, okay, well, let's see if we can, if we could teach tapping to kids and we could, solve the issues before they become lifelong issues, and just also excited by the potential that's in everyone. and looking at every child and thinking, wow, this child could be an Edison or an Einstein or a Martin Luther King Jr. or whoever it might be, except for all the stuff that stops us adults. All these beliefs about we're not good enough, we shouldn't be great, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't have that. So if we can clear that right then when it happens, I mean, wow. So I wanted to find a fun way to introduce tapping to kids. So I just had this idea about, a wizard discovering how to do this tapping. And, he's using a wand, and then everyone's saying they don't have wands, and then realizing, oh, my fingers, I can use that as a wand, and sort of tap into this magic. So it's the wizard's wish, or how he made the yuckies go away. So the yucky feelings, I then made them these little creatures that get inside, and by tapping, it gets the magic flowing inside and makes the yuckies leave our bodies.
Yeah, this is fascinating. But it's funny because I'm using EFT mainly only for physical pains with my daughter when she has a cough or something like this. And it always clears. It takes maybe one day, one night, but it clears everything. And she is now getting used to this also. She doesn't get the point yet because she's still learning them, but she's getting used to this.
Excellent. How old is she?
11.
11.
Yeah.
How old my daughter is.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much she is kind of mirroring what I'm doing, and she can see that I am persistent, and only when I saw that I was persistent, she started to do this too. And
yeah, they learn more from our actions than what we say.
Yeah. And from our energy, I notice that if our energy is lighter, what you said before, if you are in peace, children are getting this energy, this vibration, and then they can feel a contrast between other people's energy and ours, and then they know that this is doing something great.
Yeah, it's like pets. Pets are very intuitive, very in tune with energy. I hear stories from people all the time that if I'm working with a client, they'll talk about, oh yeah, when I'm tapping, my cat comes and sits in my lap. When I'm tapping, my dog will come over to me. So, and children, the younger they are, they're more sensitive to that. As adults, we start to tune it out. We start to pay attention to other things. There's still a part of us that gets it. There's a part of us that is aware of it, but we don't consciously pay as much attention to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely an attraction to that positive energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's amazing how really children can get it, and then it's again a mirror. Because if we are peaceful inside, the relationship with our children is peaceful. And if you're in turmoil inside, then something will trigger something that will just create a big drama out of nowhere.
Yeah. And that's a key thing for parents to remember. It's one that I struggle with myself, is, that taking responsibility for what we're creating. So that, if we're experiencing the child having these issues, it's like, okay, if I'm getting upset about this is something in me. I'm not a victim of my child. And allowing ourselves to, clear what's going on there. That's why whenever I'm teaching EFT to parents in terms of, or teachers in terms of working with children, I'll say, it's clear that you do the tapping on yourself first. Get clear yourself before telling them what they need to do so that you can feel better.
Oh yeah, completely, yeah. But this is a trick that also I learned with my own daughter, is that every time I get upset, I just step back and say, she's my teacher now. She's teaching me something about me. So, and that I need to be grateful for her, say thank you. Even if it's something very hurtful, it doesn't matter. I have to say thank you, and then I have to work on my own stuff.
That's very insightful. That's and it goes back to like what we were talking about before in terms of, everything that happens, it can be a lesson, it can be an opportunity for growth. And it's challenging in that moment to recognize it as such. So that's great that you have that awareness, that you can say, okay, this is an opportunity here. And as we clear out this baggage that we've been carrying, we we're able to see more and more how, we're able to be in this place of peace where we can have this awareness of, oh, here's an opportunity for growth, rather than having to get upset about it. We become less reactive and more responsive. And, we see that. So not only do we become more calm and more able to get the gift that's there, and at the same time, we also have less and less need to create those opportunities.
Yeah, and also we notice them because before, I'm going to be very honest. Before we were living in a world of anger. Okay, we have a lot of hurt because of our own history, but we were living in a world of anger, so we didn't even notice the good time. But now it's different because now we are living more in the good time. So we notice this moment of anger, and we can say, she also says, you know what, I don't want to be angry anymore, and we both start to work together, which is beautiful. But it is because we are both of us less raw now with our emotion, and we can now try to go to the center of this slowly. But I'm not succeeding all the time, It's, I still have times. I still have times where we go to school and I come back and we had a little burst of anger, and I say, oh, it's not what I want. So in the evening, the first thing I do, I hug her and I say, I'm sorry. And she say why, and I explain why I'm sorry, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, my daughter's the same age. She's one of those. She's a tween, and my son is a teenager. So, we're in that rough patch where. So there's going to be a lot of tapping over the next couple of years.
It's good, as long as you don't have too much bruise. I can feel sometimes.
Yes, yeah. As EFT becomes much more well known and more people are doing it, we're going to become more aware to see people, with bruises and stuff. Oh, you've got a teenager, haven't you?
So, Brad, I'm going to go a little bit personal here, but before I had this big crash, as I mentioned before, because where I lost my relationship, and the relationship with my dad was kind of in turmoil. I lost my job, and I had a very angry daughter. Everything seemed to be going fine in my life. So I had money, I had a relationship and everything. But then suddenly everything stopped. How can you then connect to this place? Because I think it's for my clients, it's usually one event in their life which everything together just seem to be blocking and stopping at some stage. How do you do this?
Yeah, it's always strange when something, I say strange, but when we try to figure out how come I seemed to be at the top of the world and then suddenly things crashed. And generally there's a root of it that's, may have happened many, many years ago, but we're on a track that feels, we're pretty sure it's good. It has all the trappings of being good, but there may be something that's not for our authentic highest good. And at a certain point, something inside of us says, we're off track. And so while we are believing that everything looks good, and we may even still, argue, no, it really was good, there's something inside of us that is saying, well, something inside of us says we deserve better. And we may have to go through some real crap to get there. It's not like we can go from feeling like everything's really good to everything being authentically really good in a smooth transition. Sometimes it has to go down and then up. There may also be, for a lot of people, a sense that I don't deserve this, and it's been a nagging feeling for some time that we've kind of tuned out, and that at some point something inside of us says, no, we have to deal with this. We have to address this issue. And so it hits us upside the head with a 2x4 to give us that wake-up call so that we can see there's something that's not something that we haven't dealt with, something that's not quite right here, and we need to make it better.
Mm-hmm. So it's again this investigation work of finding what is the root of this. In fact, it's always in our childhood, usually.
Most of the time. most of the time, I'm open to the possibility of it being from something pre-childhood, a past life thing. And sometimes these issues form later on. There are times when, there actually are times when we're doing great and we've been going on great, and something shows up in our lives that that takes us off track. And why that happens, I don't know. There could be some, metaphysical thing going on, some spiritual reason that we have for learning a bigger lesson in life. The story of Job. Everything's going along great, and then suddenly everything's taken away from him. It's like, well, in terms of law of attraction, well, he's certainly vibrating at a very high level beforehand. So there are times when there aren't easy answers as to what happened, but it's always trying to come from the place of, okay, whatever happened, I choose to have it be better now, and I deserve to have it be better now, and I'm going to do what it takes to get it better.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too, and that's what I'm advising my own clients. But it's always, there's one thing about dealing with your clients and dealing with your private life. It's two different issues.
And sometimes it's exactly the same issue. Sometimes I'll attract a client, and they'll bring something up. While what they present to me at the beginning is not necessarily something I resonate with, sometime in a session they'll bring up an issue and it's like, the outside world is a reflection of what's going on inside. And
I had this too.
And in those moments I can be really grateful, because then I get to tap on it while working with someone else. And there are times when I've even played with the idea that my clients have no issues whatsoever. They are just ascended masters who show up to teach me something in the guise of me teaching them.
Hey, who knows why they're attracted to you? It could be.
Yeah.
Okay, but our time is up, and it was really a pleasure to be here. If people want to get in contact with you, because I know that you have this series of programs called Money Beyond Success and Sales Beyond Success and Beyond Belief, sorry. Mm-hmm. So how do they get in contact with you?
Thanks. They can get to my website at www.bradyates.net, BRADYATES.net. And of course, you can go to YouTube and put in Brad Yates, or actually, if you put in EFT, my videos will probably come up, and I've got almost 200 videos up there now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will put the links on my blog also, so people will find you. And it was really a pleasure to be talking to you and sharing your story and your wisdom and everything that you have, and your fun. Because as a comedian, you're still very funny. So, and.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I've greatly enjoyed this conversation.